Great. Well, welcome everyone. It's so glad that you could join us today. My name is David Levine. I'm the co-founder and president of the American Sustainable Business Council. And, today we're doing a session on business and childhood cancer prevention. And this is a part of an ongoing series this week, really, as a part of the 1-year anniversary of the release of the Childhood Cancer Prevention Initiative report that we put out to really document, the environmental impacts, the toxic chemical impacts on children's health, and in particular on childhood cancer. And so this initiative has been growing for the last year and a half. And so today we're going to focus really on what businesses are doing, what businesses can be doing, should be doing to address childhood cancer prevention. So as a part of this, for those that are not familiar, the American Sustainable Business Council is a council of business organizations and companies collectively representing over 250,000 that are driving on a more just and sustainable economy. And in particular, it's how do we shift the market? How do we shift business practices? But in particular, how do we shift public policy so we can change the rules of the game to get us to a healthier, safer economy and society? And the companies you'll hear from today are some of our stellar, most prominent companies that are really at the forefront of thinking about, but acting on making their companies the best companies possible, and also working with us to stand up and to use their brands to advance a safer economy through public policy. So the Childhood Cancer Prevention Initiative that I mentioned has got a number of different stakeholders. The business community is a key component, but there's science, there's health, there's advocates, there's pediatric cancer foundations that are part of that. And those were some of the leading groups that helped us to really move this particular initiative forward. It's still part of our core group, helping us to really build this childhood cancer prevention. So what it is, in essence, is a cross-sector approach to addressing childhood cancer and really lifting up the concern that we have that a lot of the childhood cancers are actually preventable. And it's really, significant today because what we're really addressing is, in part, business has been a big part of the problem. And what you have here before you today are some of the leaders that are really proving that business does not have to operate with toxic chemicals as a part of their business plan. You can be transparent, you can be responsible, you can produce safer chemicals and products and put them in the marketplace and prosper because of it. And of course, when you do that, then children prosper, then communities and families prosper, and we believe the economy will prosper overall. So today, it's our pleasure to have Kelly Vlahakis-Hanks, heads up ECOS, Kari Warberg Block, the CEO of Earthkind, Martin Wolf of Seventh Generation, and Barry Chick of Naturepedic. So with that, it is my pleasure to turn to Kelly. Kelly, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, David. It's truly an honor to be here with you today to talk about the very important role that businesses can play in the prevention of childhood cancer. It's also an honor to be here today with Kari and Barry and Martin. I really enjoy working alongside of like-minded businesses to show that you can do the right thing for human health and planetary health and still run a successful business. A little bit about us here at ECOS. We've been around for 54 years. We manufacture over 200 plant-powered cleaning products. We do that in 4 geographically diverse facilities here in the United States. All of our facilities are water neutral, carbon neutral, and platinum zero waste. This year, we also became a climate positive manufacturer, meaning we give back more to the planet than we take. From our conception, we've been wholeheartedly committed to creating safer cleaning products. And cleaning products are critically important when we look at human health, and especially when we look at the health of our children and our most vulnerable populations. When we design our products here at ECOS, we're making sure that they're all part of the US EPA's Safer Choice certification program. It's a wonderful program in which NSF comes in and audits your products, and they audit them for, are you using the greenest ingredients? Are you innovating in terms of green science? Are they efficacious? But using the greenest ingredients is of the utmost importance. And certainly I was thrilled today on September 23rd when the EPA honored us with their Safer Choice Partner of the Year award because of our commitment to really making sure that we have the cleanest and greenest products for the marketplace. When we convened here, a year ago, and we talked about everything we were doing as a company. We talked about, fighting for ingredient transparency. Back in 2017, we've worked alongside of ASBC and the other members to fight for ingredient transparency. We won that fight here in California. And in 2021, California became the first state in the nation to require the disclosure of ingredients in cleaning products, because one of the most imperative things is we have to give consumers access to information and knowledge. They need to be able to make informed decisions. And it's really a shame that the United States has not required nationally a right to know act for cleaning products, because they're on our clothes, they're on our dishes, we're drinking out of our glasses, we're eating off of our plates, and every single day we are consuming the ingredients that are in our cleaning products. So products that have skulls and crossbones and say do not ingest, we are ingesting. We're washing baby bottles, we're washing their clothes. Their skin is absorbing those chemicals. So parents have a right to know what's in cleaning products so they can make informed decisions, especially because when the EPA was created in 1970, 82,000 chemicals were grandfathered in. And as we know, TSCA is simply checking about 10 chemicals a year, and it's certainly not enough. So fighting for that transparency is of critical importance to us. We will continue to do that. But, last year I talked a lot about my own motivation. I lost my mother to cancer when she was very young. But this year, I would say, David, has been a particularly challenging year. My daughter's 17, her best friend is 17. Her 17-year-old best friend was given 30 to 60 days to live. I'm sorry, it makes me emotional even talking about it, in March of this year. And this young lady is such a wonderful child. She has been such a wonderful friend to my daughter. She is a child who is full of so much grace and love and promise and had such a bright future. She was diagnosed with cancer about 1.5 years ago. And at the end of March this year, given 30 to 60 days to live. I'm super thrilled that she's made it 5.5 months with us, but we're with her family each and every week. And as I watch her parents grapple with, how this could have happened, it certainly fuels my passion to do everything we can to make sure that businesses take a stand, that businesses that know about the detrimental effects of ingredients and products take a stand and do what's right. It's the right thing for our consumers. It's the ethical thing. It's the moral thing. It's the thing that consumers will demand. There's no reason that last year when we sat together, childhood cancer was up 34%, and now it's up 41%. I mean, it's unacceptable. And we play a critical role as businesses in terms of the products, the ingredients that we choose to use. So this work is more important to me than ever before. And I certainly will, at the helm of ECOS, continue to do each and everything we can to always innovate and create the safest products for the marketplace, always provide access to information and education. Since our last meeting, we released something called the Nasties, which is a list of 500 ingredients that we would never use in our cleaning products. And we wanted to make sure to publish those at ecos.com so that as individuals are looking for information, they can come to our website as a resource. They can read about these chemicals. We saw in the press last week a lot about formaldehyde in cleaning products and the fact that, they're working on a ban of that. But it's unbelievable. We know that it's linked to myeloid leukemia in children, and yet it's still persistent in so many of the consumer products in the marketplace. So we will certainly continue to fight and champion change in our industry and in the consumer product space. And just really proud here to be here today with all of you during this important month to call for action.
Thank you, Kelly. And our heart goes out to the family and friends. And unfortunately, it's all too common a story that we hear, which is exactly why you and the work that you're championing and the others is so important, because it is lives saved. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
Well, next, I'd like to turn to Kari Warberg, from Earthkind to pick it up from there. Kari.
Great, thank you, David, and congratulations, Kelly, on your Partner of the Year award. That's fantastic. Thank you for the amazing work, and hello to everybody joining us and my fellow panelists. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm coming to you from Orlando in a hotel room, so hopefully nobody knocks on the door while I'm with you today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kari Warberg Block. I'm founder and CEO of Earthkind. We are a pest prevention company that started almost 20 years ago from my farm in Western North Dakota. I had a problem with rodents getting into our tractor cabs and trucks and combines, and there was nothing on the market that was safe to use to keep them out of our equipment and doing the damage. Add to that, rodents are a public health risk pest. They carry over 35 known diseases. They're nothing to mess with. You don't want them in your stuff. I called every company out there. They all said there's nothing that's not toxic. You might want to plug in an ultrasonic device, but that wasn't registered. It didn't necessarily work that well. I refused to use something that wasn't going to be safe around my kids and my pets, and also safe for the wildlife. There really wasn't nothing out there. So I invented a product, the first botanical rodent repellent to come to the market. But I took it a step further, and I took it all the way through the federal EPA to get a federal FIFRA registration, because I felt it was really important to have that to set a new standard, that there could actually be an effective way that was plant powered. It was all new protocols. It was a lot of work to get it done, but we got it done. And then it offered our customers the highest assurance that we did the testing, we had the safety testing, we had the tests on the environment, tests for human safety, water, you name it. We did the whole toxic 6-pack testing. And now it's opened the door to a lot of change, because when we first did it, and the reason 98% of everything out there was toxic or a poison. And I was like, that's just not really good. And we were the last category really in consumer products to have any type of innovation, just because it's so very difficult to get through all of the hoops of the feds. And I recently wrote a book about this. David put a picture of me holding the book, and I kind of walk people through some of the things that we did if you're interested and want more information. But basically, we started with nothing and like living in poverty. But I went to SBA, I went to the USDA, I went to the university system, basically crowdsourced as much as we could, put an open innovation out there on the market. Today we have 5 competitors using some of the same kind of delivery systems. And I knew, okay, that is probably the fastest way that we can keep our children and our wildlife safe, is to do a better delivery system than a toxic or poison spray. And here we are all these years later. We've built our company to selling in about 35,000 stores. And what's so interesting about this, and I'm so happy to share, is we recently won an award too. We were named the Global Sustainability Initiative of the Year. And what we did is a mass collaboration with retail partners, with schools, with teachers, with the National Wildlife Federation, and crowdsourcing basically a cause. Let's protect the monarch butterfly, and it makes us all safer in return. And so that's really a fun thing. But what I like to highlight there's some 3 trends. So I'm going to gamify this a little bit. So see if people know, but there's 3 trends out there right now for people watching in business that it's really, really on our side. And it's a little bit easier than those pioneers of us here when we first started breaking through those walls. But I'll just put up a little picture here. Self-gratification. Right now, consumers want to be delighted every step of the way. And having things like cruelty-free, which we are, climate neutral, sustainability, that really, we're in a time where now that's really important to people. So it's really a business imperative. Plus it delights the consumer. Another thing, see if you can guess what this one is. Probably not. This is our products, but simplicity. Consumers really want natural and super easy to understand products. And for those of us on the panel, it's harder than we know, because we have regulations and a lot of rules. So there's so much opportunity for us to work on the policy side to find a way to communicate with the public what really is safety. People want natural, but there's a big story behind that. The other key trend is, put a little heart up there, people are self-reflective now. They're wanting to purchase products, and they're wanting to purchase from brands that identify with their values. So that's really positive, because when all of us started up here, with us, 98% of everything sold was toxic, and people didn't really think about it. People that ate organic food didn't really think of using a toxic pesticide in their home, what it was doing to their children and to their health. Now today, it's starting to turn a little bit. We've been putting out educational content for many years to help educate on the dangers and the concerns of using the toxic pesticides. And a recent study in the report you can download, hopefully there's a link attached to this, the childhood cancer prevention. You'll learn a lot from that, and there's some really good statistics in there that you can educate your employees, your coworkers, whatever situation you're in. You need to look at that, because it's pretty startling. Just in pesticides alone, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that pesticides in the blood and the urine, 90% of the population. And how that contributes to childhood cancer is during exposure when the mom's pregnant. There is the risks they're proven, and it's there. And so I urge people to really look at the labels and do your research, because what you have in your home, like with pest control, normally it might be a spray. You don't see it, you don't smell it. That doesn't mean that there's not an effect on your children. So I urge you to look at that report. And I'm happy to answer any more questions as time goes on.
Terrific, Kari. All right, next up, Barry Chick from Naturepedic. Barry, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody else. Pleasure to be here. So let's focus a little bit on the causes of childhood cancer. So let me give you a little bit of background, and then we'll look at that. When I was in engineering school back in 1970, the joke was the solution to pollution is dilution. Sounds very funny, doesn't it? Except that at that moment in time, Lake Erie was dying. I lived close to Lake Erie. Lake Erie was dying because of all the pollution. And the lesson that I learned was, you know what, in 1870, when industry dumped all its toxic chemicals into Lake Erie, the lake just swallowed it up, no problem. 1890, no problem. 1910, 1930, 1950, no problem. 1970, big problem. The lake was dying. And by the way, it's still illegal today, a half a century later, it's still illegal for commercial fishing in Lake Erie because the mercury levels are still too high. So what was the point that I learned and that we all have to understand? The point is that there are no regulations of any serious, to any serious extent of toxic chemicals. They can be used anywhere, okay? That's the bottom line. Now, back then in the 1970s and into the 1980s, this became an issue, and industry made a deal with the government. They made a deal that at the end of the day, when industry is done with their production, whatever the toxic chemicals that are left will go to a landfill. They will no longer be dumped into the environment, Lake Erie or otherwise, okay? But the other part of the deal was that the government is not allowed to tell industry how to make its products and what kind of ingredients can go into those products. That was the deal made back then. We still basically live under that same deal with a couple exceptions, but for the most part, it's the same deal. So yes, industry pretty much stopped dumping their toxic chemicals into the environment, but that's only the waste that they stopped dumping into the environment or sending it to a landfill. But the product itself can be full of toxic chemicals. So if you're making vinyl, for example, you know, when you're using antimony, whatever, yeah, whatever's left over at the end of the day will go to the landfill, whatever's dirty and so on. But the product itself can be full of all kinds of chemicals that perhaps should not be used, okay? Then we go to the next point, and that is, who's regulating chemicals? The answer is, for the most part, nobody. The only place where there is some regulation is OSHA, and that's regulating in factories. So if you're running a factory and you're making a chemical, okay, you are now required, I don't mean now, just recently, this goes back to the 1980s, you are required to inform your employees of the chemicals that are being used in the factory that they are dealing with. And they need to know, because if there's an accident, if there's a spill, whatever, they need to know how to react to it. Sounds great, with one exception. The law, which is still in effect as of today, says that if you don't know about a certain problem, you don't have to tell your employees. And you don't have to, and what they do is they create what's called, it used to be called an MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet. And today it's just called an SDS, the Safety Data Sheet. So all these factories that make chemicals have to create safety data sheets, okay, for their employees and for anybody else that asks. But the law, when it was written, had a loophole, and the loophole was that if you don't know about a problem, you're not legally obligated to say anything. You know, it can't be used against you. So what does that mean in reality? What it means is that many, perhaps most, chemical manufacturers don't do any testing. If they don't do any testing, they don't know the harm that will come from this chemical. And that's the reality that we live under today. And that is that there are tens of thousands, there's 80 some thousand chemicals running around in the marketplace, okay? And tens of thousands of these chemicals have never really been tested. We have no clue. We have no clue where they're being used, and we have no clue what they're causing. Okay. Now the chemical people, they will tell you, oh, it's just a little bit, and they will use a famous expression called "the dose makes the poison." Okay, and on paper that is the correct line. If the dose is small enough, it's not a poison. Okay, very nice. But what they don't tell you is, did they test to find out at what dose does it become a poison? And what dose does it become a poison for a child as opposed to an adult? They don't know. Okay. And then the next thing that they don't know is, what if you get this little bit of chemical? I'm saying little bit, I'm being a little bit facetious here. We don't know, a little bit can be very toxic, but you understand where I'm going with this. What if you get this little bit every single day? They don't know what that's causing, and what if this little chemical combines with that little chemical and creates a third chemical that nobody's paying attention to, and it's right in a baby product? They don't know. We're living in a world where we have no clue what's going on. Okay, so it starts with 80 some, whatever it is, 80 some thousand chemicals running around the environment. They're not being regulated. The factories that make them, if they don't have to test for them, and this way they don't have to tell you what the problems are. That is the reality we're living in today. It sounds crazy. You couldn't make this up. It's that ridiculous. But that is the fact of the matter. Okay, and these chemicals are in baby products and all kinds of products. So for example, in my case, I'll just tell you how we started Naturepedic. My wife sent me to a baby store. This is 18, 19 years ago, to buy a crib mattress for our first grandchild. And I'm looking at all this material. I'm making the long story a little short. Vinyl has phthalate chemicals, which some of them have been banned since then, but there's still lots of other phthalate chemicals that have not been banned. They're being used to this day. And nobody's paying attention. There's PFAS, waterproofing. Nobody's paying attention. Totally toxic, and it's right on the baby mattress. Then there's polyurethane foam with all kinds of chemicals that make that foam. And because polyurethane foam is so flammable, now they have to add other chemicals, flame retardant chemicals, many of which are very toxic, in order to keep the flammability under some control. It's not really working that well, but that's the idea. They try to keep it under control. And then there's formaldehyde, there's pesticides, there's glues, there's whatever, GMOs. It's all in these products, and nobody even is paying attention to it. So I came home that day from the store. I mean, I wouldn't buy the product. I came home that day and I'm kidding around with my wife, and I said, we have Amish friends. My grandfather slept on straw. Let's go to our Amish friends and get some straw. That's safer than what I saw in the store. A true story. And that's how Naturepedic started. We ended up making our own mattress. We put it on the internet and people started sending me money. And I said, whoa, we're making mattresses. One thing just led to the other, and here we are. And the point is, we have to educate the public. The public doesn't know. The public doesn't realize that vinyl on that mattress could be hurting the baby. And everybody thinks that the government, and the salesperson at that store told me that. She said at one point, when I was looking at the crib mattress, she said, oh, come on. If it wasn't safe, the government wouldn't allow it to be sold. Ha, 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 ha. Okay?
And Barry, that's probably a good place to hold that thought. If you want to finish up now, that would be great.
No,
But I think
I've made my point.
the point being that's why ASBC, that's why all these business leaders are not only creating the right kind of products, as you just heard Barry explain, but are also working with us to advocate for the public policy, because it's not in place, as he's saying, and that's the game changer. Because otherwise we're going to move in an incremental form with too many companies not in the right place at this moment in time, and that's why this is so important. So thanks, Barry, and
You're very welcome.
we're gonna squeeze in and move over to Martin Wolf of Seventh Generation.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much, Barry, Kari, and Kelly. Everything that you've said is pretty much in what I'm going to say. I have some slides and I'll try to go through them very quickly. First, I'll talk a little bit about seventh generation, then how we select ingredients for our products, which will in many ways echo what you heard from Kelly and what Kari and Barry, and then talk about the importance of advocacy in what we do. So first, seventh generation likes to do business differently. We are a certified B Corporation, which means unlike standard corporations, which have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders, we have a responsibility to shareholders, employees, communities, and the environment, and we take that seriously. Our name comes from the Iroquois Confederacy, a confederacy of Indian or American, Native American peoples that was formed in the 1700s. And one of those laws is, in our every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. And we have a mission to transform the world into a healthy, sustainable, and equitable place for the next 7 generations, not merely to make superior cleaning products or be a superior business, but to truly transform our planet. To echo what Barry had discussed, most companies work on the idea that risk to human health, which is a function of the hazard of a chemical, can also be controlled by limiting the exposure to a chemical. But as Barry already pointed out, it's impossible for a company to know what exposures take place once the chemical has left their factory. Yes, you can control exposures in a factory where you can install engineering controls, but once that bottle gets outside, we find that consumers are very clever in how they use our products, definitely not always in the way that we intended. We find that they use multiple products with the same chemicals in them, so the exposure is many times greater. And there are interactions between the chemicals in our products and other chemicals in the environment that have never been studied. So rather than try to control exposure, which you can't control, seventh generation, as we heard from Kelly also, and as we heard from Barry and Kari, we control the risk of harm from our products by controlling the hazard of the chemicals we use. Kelly mentioned her list of over 900 chemicals that they would not use. Seventh generation also has a list. It's based on the California list of candidate chemicals. It's a list of 23 lists of chemicals, and we will not use any of those because they are known to have hazards. So first we eliminate hazards. Then if we can't eliminate a hazard for some reason, we consider the exposure, and only if we're really confident that there will not be additional exposures will we use that chemical. And if we don't have that guarantee, then we use what's called precaution. We simply won't use that chemical. There are always alternatives. So like Earth Friendly, we use the Safer Choice logo to confirm that the chemicals we're selecting are indeed not hazardous. We are also EPA Safer Choice Partner of the Year. So congratulations, Kelly. We look forward to joining you on a virtual stage to receive that recognition. And finally, we know that we have to make products safe and available to everyone. It's great to make a human healthy and environmentally healthy product, but if you're not performing in the cost performance continuum that consumers expect, you know, low cost for your Chevrolet, higher cost for your Cadillac, if you're not there, then people won't buy your products. So we have to make sure, as ECOS does, that our products are appropriately priced and perform. Now, the importance of advocacy. It's great that we do these things, the 4 companies represented on stage, but we need to get all companies to do these things. And in addition, we need regulations to be strengthened so that those companies that are not doing it willingly will be forced to do it through regulation. Regulation helps set a floor below which no company can go, so no company is burdened with the extra cost of doing the right thing, but all companies do the right thing, and that cost is reflected in everyone's prices. It's absolutely necessary. To Barry's point, we need to change the way chemicals are regulated. It's no longer acceptable for the EPA to have to prove a substance is harmful before it can regulate it, and not have the right or the ability to require companies to test their chemicals first. It's ridiculous. We also have 60 some odd thousand chemicals that have never been tested. They were grandfathered at the time that TSCA was passed back in 1976. So it's imperative that we advocate for change, and I'm proud to work with the other people on this panel and the other companies of ASBC that are advocating for that change. And here are a list of some of the companies that we work with and some of the other agencies that we work with. So thank you, and thank you to the other panelists for presenting all that they do to make this a better world.
Great. Well, thank you all for the presentations. Thank you all for the work that you're doing, and wanted to sort of move us into a little bit of a dialogue now. I think, you know, all of you quite understand that this is, you know, the issues around toxic chemicals and the impact that they have on childhood cancer, but the health of everyone and our planet, you know, is of utmost importance and something we need to address at a broader scale. So I'm just curious if y'all could weigh in a bit and help us think through, you know, what is it, you know, how do we move the market? How do we move businesses writ large? And, you know, we'll separate this into, you know, first talking about businesses and then talking about what we think about the next opportunities are for policy. But if the moment you think, how do we shift the mindsets of businesses out there to take a different sort of responsibility for what they produce and how they produce it and the like. Any of you want to weigh in?
Well, I'll
Kelly?
start,
Yeah.
David, certainly,
Yeah.
you know, and I absolutely love so much of what Martin said in his presentation. And transparency is key. To get businesses to really act, consumers have to demand that action. Businesses are going to create products that consumers will purchase, and consumers should become informed. They should read all the information. They've got their cell phones and they can be forensic consumers, and they should really make sure that they're only supporting companies that are producing safe products, because that's certainly the #1 way to get businesses to act, to have consumers rise up and demand change. Retailers have a significant amount of power in the marketplace, because retailers can also take action and they can prohibit the inclusion of toxic ingredients and products that they'll have on their shelves in the marketplace. I think as consumers are looking for safer choices, retail partners can rise up and say, hey, listen, these are our guidelines. If you want to sell your products in our marketplaces, you must be compliant with those. And then obviously third would be government action and public policies that would regulate certain things. But I really do believe the consumer has a tremendous amount of power. And I think if businesses are paying attention to their consumer, and that's what businesses should be doing, we serve our consumer, we should be paying attention to their needs, to their wants, and we should be acting on those. And really, there's nothing greater or more important than health. And so if we're not serving our consumers with healthy products, I do believe that businesses that prioritize greed and they prioritize short-term capitalism over long-term value, I don't think those businesses will be sustainable in the long run.
Great. Yeah, Kari.
Yeah, I could say something in my category, specifically with pest control. It was 98% toxic kill when we started. That's 14, 15 years that we've been out on the shelves, and now it's down to 88%, which is it's really big. There's a big change, but I think it's really key to form partnerships with the retailers and come up with programs that help the safer products get more space, because they'll sell what the consumer wants. And I can say just the shift in the years that we've been out there, it is night and day. They take the calls now, they want to use content, they want to work with the brands because it's good for them to put a good foot forward about health. And there's just, it takes creativity, we found, to find ways to work with them and partner with them that they want to champion the safer, because in our category, it's still just a teeny tiny space. But the funny thing, when you ask a consumer in the surveys, what we found, 88% of the people they say very stressed when it comes to buying a product to control a pest. And so they have to make this choice, and there's so much, this delight. There's a lady on a cell phone right there at the counter or at the store. That's the kind of things. And our retailers this year are figuring out how we can get content and videos on that consumer's hand and putting digital programs that help them in that store when they get confronted with that choice. What am I going to do? What am I going to choose? Because there are options, but they need to know about them and buy them. And I don't know if policy can help in any of that, but it certainly takes some good marketing and good relationships and good collaboration to move that dial.
Great. Barry, Martin. Yeah, Barry, go ahead.
There's a problem called WhackaMole, all right? And applied to chemicals, when you prohibit or you ban a chemical, what does industry do? Does industry learn the lesson as to why the chemical was banned? Unfortunately, most of the time, no, they don't. All they do when you ban this chemical is they switch to that chemical, okay? And they're always playing this game, against the government, against the regulations. They know what's coming, and when something is going to get banned, they just switch to the next thing. Call it whack-a-mole. Everybody understands what that means. So in order to solve the problem, we have to solve the whack-a-mole problem. In other words, until now, we have, to some degree, been successful, we meaning the environmental community in general. We have to some degree been successful at bringing attention to this particular problem, to that particular problem, to phthalates, to PFAS, whatever. And we're educating the public. And in the end, educating the public is everything. And Kelly made that point earlier. I mean, to me, at the end of the day, the solution is going to come from the public, from the public and up. But the point that I want to make here is that we have to, when we educate the public, we have to stop not stop, but we have to go beyond the whack-a-mole kind of, banning this is good. I'm not against that, but it's not enough to just ban something. We have to go beyond all that, educate the public, to say we got to stop this entirely, and then we can go to the government and say to the EPA, for example, to create a set of rules. And you cannot create a chemical unless you pass whatever the requirements might be. Okay, then the government will really be effective. Till now, the government is quasi-effective. So the bottom line is to educate the public, and then get rid of this whack-a-mole kind of thinking.
Martin?
Well, I'll echo very briefly what's already been said. The public has to call for change, and we know that companies that use green chemistry grow about 5 times faster than conventional companies. But despite that rapid growth, we're still combined less than perhaps 1 or 2% of the market. So persuading the public is important, and it's happening, but it's also extremely slow. We also need to get retailers involved, because retailers talk directly to the public. What they offer for sale determines to some extent what consumers will buy. But we also see that being a difficult road to hoe. We see the big conventional CPGs putting a lot of pressure on retailers and limiting some of the programs that they have. So we do need retailers, and they've done a very good job helping effect change, but there's still a lot of headwind in that. And finally, we need sound regulation. I'll just point out that the European Commission just announced a plan for chemical management for sustainability, which would do what Barry called for. It would regulate chemicals based on the hazard that they represent. And no hazardous chemical would be allowed in a consumer product unless that consumer product was absolutely essential and the chemical was absolutely essential to that product. So it would, in essence, make sure that only products that did not have any hazardous chemicals were available to consumers. And I would love to see that type of regulation take root here in the United States. So we need to advocate.
Yes, well, that's a good segue, so, let's just say on the policy front, or perhaps on some of the other fronts, that we've got three points of at least of ways of sort of leveraging perhaps our collective power. And I think that's the other part of this. Each of you, the fact that each company has had to develop their own list of chemicals that they don't use, and the like, and a list of chemicals and like that they are able to use. This is not good business. The investment that each of you have made. I remember even 30 plus years ago talking to some of the, some of you and some of the other companies that were busy trying to figure this out, and everyone was figuring it out on their own and the like. And this is continuing, because we don't have this comprehensive thinking and action and policy and the like. So let's just talk strategy for a moment. So how, what could we do differently and collectively, right, that we can't do alone? So if you hold that as a centerpiece, then how is it that we can hit the policy? Martin, you started to talk about the comprehensive policy. What would that look like to mount a campaign like that? What would it look like to mount the campaign for, as businesses together, to go into the retailers? What would it look like for us to do a joint campaign to reach consumers? Each of, certainly the 4 companies on this phone have extensive reach, let alone the others that are a part of the ASBC network. So just help think through out loud now, what action could look like to really make an impact in one of those 3 areas. Barry, go for it.
So here's one approach, and that approach is for ASBC and all of us to go to retailers. So let me tell you what happened, and that it opened my mind. One major retailer all of a sudden started ordering a lot of our products. And I was very curious as to why that was. So I was talking to several people, and they told me that there was one attorney there, one inside, corporate attorney, that told the rest of them, you know what? You're claiming to sell non-toxic, organic products. And you know what? You're going to get sued sooner or later because you don't know what you're doing. And it's all a bunch of lies. And if you're gonna sell organic and non-toxic, you better find a supplier who can give you something that they can back it up. And we got the business. And what did that teach me? What it taught me was maybe we should be going, and we meaning all of us, and ASBC in particular, we should be going to all these major retailers and making that statement to them that says, you know what, you're making all kinds of claims and you don't know what you're talking about. You're gonna get sued eventually if you don't shape up. And I bet you're gonna get some really good responses.
Excellent. Others? Retailers, consumers, policy. Kelly, yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of policy, I've really appreciated the collaboration with so many of the ASBC members on the 2017 initiative to get the law passed here in California, the Cleaning Products Right to Know Act. And I think us coming together and going together, we were with Seventh Generation, we were with Honest Company, we were with so many of the other companies. To ask for that was very powerful and very effective. And when Governor Brown signed that into law, I think the fact that businesses were finally saying there is a way to offer transparency, because so long businesses are in there telling our legislators that they have to protect their formulas, that they can't share their recipes. That same fight happened with food products. And, and then that was changed and you have a clear listing of ingredients, and that same fight has to take place for cleaning products. And I think so many of us can come together and we can say to the legislators, hey, listen, we all know what's in one another's products. We can all reverse engineer one another's products. The only person in the room who doesn't know what's in the product is the consumer. So when these businesses come and they make the case that we have to protect their formulas, it's simply not a true statement. They all know the technology is there for all of us to invest in it and know exactly what's in their formulas. So we need to change that narrative. And as businesses really echo the importance of the consumer not being the only individual in the room in the dark. And I think that worked here in California, but I think we have to now take it from this sort of piecemeal state by state to a national level. And I certainly hope with the current administration, we'll have an opportunity to really have these important discussions and have businesses come together and to deliver a powerful counter narrative to this pervasive idea that government has to protect the information for companies to be successful.
Great. Anyone else want to weigh in?
That was really a great example, Kelly, of companies working together to affect change. And it really was the sea change in transparency, which I hope will continue. But we need to also affect that bigger sea change of getting those ingredients that can be harmful out of products, because companies are doing their best to protect those chemicals and make sure they stay in commerce. And we see this today around climate change. Anyone who's picked up a newspaper in the past year knows about the California fires, knows about the hurricanes and flooding in the Southeast, or even as far north as New York. Yet we don't see companies saying, well, we need to cut back on our fossil fuels. What we see them saying is we need to continue exploration to keep the costs down. Well, we need a new form of accounting. So the costs of flooded subways or of flooded Louisiana or of combustible and combusted California and the disruption of food supplies from that state are taken into account when the cost of a product is taken into account. And I'll say again, we need regulations that make sure all companies are playing by a minimum set of rules so that companies that are recognizing and doing the right thing aren't penalized for it, but rather we're all doing the right thing. And we all share that cost, and we all present to the consumer products that are better for the environment and better for human health.
Great. Anyone else?
That's Kari.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity too for collaboration with innovation. And it cuts across everything from your supply chain all the way up to your policy. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us there as well, because it's not like just a button you push, like you push the green button or the red button, right? Either stop or green. We're kind of at building the bridge in between the two, because we're in this transition with our economy from petroleum based to going to this plant based. It's going to take a long time. But I've found the more we can, like with our retailers, for instance, we've said, take this product home, tell me what your family thinks. And I wish I'd learned that lesson 10 years earlier, because they came back and they said, oh my gosh, my kids are all about this. My wife believes this. And a lot of times the people in that buying position, they're not thinking, making the decision with all the constituencies or the stakeholders, like a B Corp would make decisions. They're thinking of themselves and what they got to make. But I tell you, pulling the family in can be really powerful.
It's great. Well, look, thank you all. And, this work continues, as you can hear, over this last year, as we've been building the Childhood Cancer Prevention Initiative, and the other campaigns to address, there's the work that ASBC is doing on regenerative agriculture and justice, clean water, climate and energy. Right now, we're in the midst of a major effort to try and pass the infrastructure bill and build back better. We need all those businesses to be able to support this effort. This is our chance. We can't, as everyone has heard, we know we cannot go on like this with profit driving the way our economy runs alone. And the planet is suffering, our communities, our families are suffering because of it. But we have the solutions. The solutions we're proving in the companies that you hear today, from Ecos to Earthkind, Naturepedic, and 7th Generation, that business can operate like this. And, and that it is crucial for us to band together to have the impact in these areas that we identified, from the public policy to banding together to get to more consumers, to help them to understand, to getting to the retailers, to get them to be more responsible themselves. So the work is before us so that we can take these preventative measures, and we can protect our children, now and for generations to come. So we also have one more in this series during this Childhood Cancer Prevention Initiative series of events tomorrow at 3:30 on communities taking action. So I put that in the chat for folks to be able to look at, and also the link to the rest of the series that's transpired. And those links, if you miss them, will be available on the ASBC website and the Cancer Free Economy website, one of our key partners in all of this work. So we ask you to support these businesses and help influence the other businesses that you connect with. And if you are a business on the call today, we ask you to join this initiative. And you can go to the ASBC website to join with us in help making a difference, because we certainly need it and it's certainly possible. So thank you all for joining us again today, and we look forward to working together collaboratively going forward. Now's our time. Now's our time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, Kari, Martin, and Barry. Appreciate you all.
Thank you, David, and thank you, others.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.